My name is Eva Wedlund, and I work as an occupational therapist at the MECFS outpatient clinic at the Neurological Rehabilitation Clinic at Stora Sköndal in Stockholm, Sweden. Today, I will tell you about our clinic, what we meet, and how I, as an occupational therapist, can support and help MECFS patients. But first, I want to thank the Icelandic ME Federation for the invitation to speak today about something that I think is so important. I have been working with neurological rehabilitation in a day ward setting since 1990. And I have met patients with a variety of neurological diseases and injuries, such as stroke, traumatic brain injury, and epilepsy. Most of my patients have had injuries or diseases with major problems that are not seen on outside. For example, cognitive problems as impaired memory, impaired attention, brain fatigue, or impaired ability to plan. And one of the hardest issues to handle, accepting something you did not choose, something that has an impact on your everyday life, and something you're forced to live with and handle. Having MECFS is also to handle a hidden handicap. And again, I want to emphasize that it is one of the hardest things to cope with in relation to yourself and in relation to others. Stora Sköndal is a foundation outside Stockholm, or in Stockholm. It's a non-profit organization with several branches, as you can see. And one of the branches is the Neurological Rehabilitation Clinic. Stora Sköndal has got a section for inpatient rehab, a day ward, a speech therapy center, and physiotherapy center. And of course, the MECFS Center since June 2015. We work under an agreement with the Stockholm County Council to provide assessment and treatment for persons with MECFS in an outpatient setting, where we give care and support to patients in all ages. We use Canada criteria for diagnosis. The mission includes completing diagnostic work, caring for patients with severe and moderately severe MECFS, and caring for patients in need of team-based rehabilitation. The team consists of 5 physicians. They are specialists in neurology, rehabilitation medicine, and general medicine. And the other members of the team are a nurse, occupational therapist, social worker, physiotherapist, and neuropsychologist. And we miss now a dietitian, really. We have had a dietitian and it was really good. The teamwork is essential, and we have an interdisciplinary approach, which means that the professionals work in close cooperation with each other and with the patient towards shared goals, and with a high level of integration and communication. We all look for biomarkers to improve the clinical diagnosis of MECFS, and of course, one or more ways to find a cure, or at least a relief for the severe disabilities that this disease means. However, in the current situation where it is no cure, we need to provide support and assistance to those living with ME/CFS and their families. And whenever possible, provide tools for them to better manage the situation and reduce their suffering. I want to show you a statement from one of our patients who described how it feels like living with ME/CFS. Getting frustrated and sorry for not being able to cook, bake, drive a car, gardening, or buying groceries. To be so dependent on my husband most of the time, not to be able to spend time with my children and grandchildren, even though they live close, and never being a babysitter is sad. I feel like being disconnected from life, being a prisoner in my own home. At the ME/CFS Center, we meet in both adults and children, as I said. We have now 400 patients, and women are in majority. And patients come from whole of Sweden, but most Stockholm, of course, where we are based. I think it's approximately 20 patients are bedbound and therefore completely incapable to visit the center. But most patients are not totally bedbound, but they are still spending most of the days in the bed or in home, with the restricted capacity of activity. We have also patients who are still trying to work and then almost always part-time. To describe the complex problems we meet in the patients, I'll use the WHO's International Classification of Functioning, ICF, that is divided in body function, activity and participation, and environmental factors. And the symptoms, as we have heard before and as we know, appears after a minimum of physical and mental or emotional exertion. The symptoms may vary from individual to individual, but in my work I don't think it's unusual for patients to have many difficulties and disabilities that they relate to and affect every moment of everyday life, as muscular fatigue, myalgia, widespread pain, headache, exhausted, tired, fatigue. In Sweden we are talking about what should we use for a word for this heavy tiredness that this disease means. Brain fog, oversensitivity to noise, light and emotions, difficulties to handle heat and cold, fever, gastric problems, and the cognitive problems that are cited as some of the most functionally disabling symptoms of ME/CFS. These problems lead to decreased ability to perform activities in all areas of daily life. Here are examples of activities that often also, again, after minimal effort, lead to PEM, post-exertional malaise. That it is the exacerbation of a patient's symptoms and deterioration in function and ability in activity. For many of our patients, a lot of these activities are totally impossible to perform in daily life. Using your body by walking, sitting on or standing, and it can be much worse to stand than walking. And for many, it's quite exhausting to perform activity above working height By that I mean when you have to reach something and to be active with your arms above your waist, a little bit long up. It's difficult to use public transportations, very much because of all impressions, both visual and the noisiness, but also because of all the movements. Therefore, when you are traveling, all your restrained energy goes to the traveling part, and by arrival you are totally exhausted for any participation in the activities, not to mention the travel back home. It can be difficult to chew and take care of basic hygiene. Shower and washing your hair can be the only activity you are able to perform in several days. For ME/CFS patients, it's a really hard physical activity. Imagine standing in the shower, maybe balancing in a bathtub, reaching for the soap, shampooing, adjusting the shower head, and so on. Managing activities in the domestic life take also a lot of the already limited energy these patients have. And most of the patients I meet are unable to go into a supermarket to buy groceries because of the amount of impression they had to handle, the lighting, all the people, noises, and perhaps music in the background, and the physical effort with long distances. They also have pronounced difficulties planning, organizing, cooking, serving meals for oneself or others. Activities at home are something that worsen, of course, the symptoms. For example, walking back and forth between the refrigerator and stove, emptying the dishwasher, cleaning, doing the laundry. Many patients try to do parts of this anyway because of a strong desire to be able to handle it and contribute to the family household. The ME/CFS patients are consequently very limited in participating in work, education, recreation, caring for the others, general tasks and demand in society, among other things because of reading problems, learning difficulties, problems to interact with others, just to talk in telephone, and being able to concentrate in different environments. There are a variety of environmental factors that can affect activity capacity due to both physical and mental exertion. For example, stairs, small apartments where the patient doesn't have the possibility to withdraw or shut out noise or lighting. It can be difficult to find a good resting position when time in bed constitutes the majority of the hour of the day. As I mentioned before, the primary reason why it's impossible for these patients to work sometimes can be the transportation distance, that is mean to get to and from work. We also meet patients that lose the tiny capacity they have due to the mental and emotional exertion, that is mean to be ridiculed by people from whom they seek help, or lose the income because the social insurance do not believe them. The goals or aims of the treatment or the approaches is to prevent recurring crashes, symptom reductions, prevent gradual or prolonged deterioration, and whenever possible, use the limited energy for prioritized important activities. And in this way, at some level, to get an increased power over the situation and be able to choose the crashes and in return, perhaps improvement of quality of life. I want to emphasize that the objective is not to gradually increase the amount of activity or intensity, but to save and reallocate the limited force and energy in the best way, always based on the individual's own condition. When receiving ME/CFS patients, it's important to consider how to facilitate for the patients before and during the visits. In our clinic, we offer patients transport service, also as a lying transport if needed. We also have a transport wheelchair available. We give the patient the opportunity to lie down during the visit or to sit in a comfortable armchair. We recommend the patient to bring a support person. It could be a family member or a friend. That support person can be helpful with taking memory notes, and it's also valuable for the patient and for us to involve the family as soon as possible. A calm environment is supportive, and it's really important to be able to subdue the light. And as I said before, many patients can be severely exhausted of bright light, and it's needed that the patient have the energy to participate in the visit. And in this way, we can facilitate a visit, and hopefully we don't create an excessive deterioration. The treatment is about getting to know the new physical and mental boundaries of energy, and to learn what most affect the symptoms and not to push themselves in order to prevent an exacerbation of symptoms. This strategy is called pacing, and today it's the strategy that can help patients to handle the increased effort-related symptoms. But in addition, I also think it's important to become aware of the activity performance and to make concrete changes in the environment that facilitate. My contact with the patients start by doing activity evaluation. This means that patients is required to keep an activity log, a simple activity log, and therefore becomes aware of what he or she does in daily life. In this way, you can discover possible patterns for what causes the most loading deterioration. This also means work for increased acceptance of the situation, and in prolongation, handle everyday life in a little bit different way. With the activity log as a starting point, we analyze what has happened lately and how the patient performed certain activities in detail. It's often found that the mental or cognitive strain is much more exhausting than the patients may think, and the cognitive symptoms are often delayed more than the physical symptoms. This requires a good alliance with the patient in order to follow this process and give support, and to understand previous activity patterns and current life situation. The approach to save and redistribute energy is based on a good long-term planning with insight and awareness about where the limit goes for not being further deteriorated. To suddenly plan the day, perhaps when you feel a little bit better and experience a little bit more energy than usual, it's easy to forget about what did I yesterday, and the push and crash may occur. Use a calendar or a schedule with columns to plan for a whole week or two. Make sure to schedule first the activities that are time-bound. Then it's easier to adapt and distribute the energy for other activities. Create menus for a week or two. It's difficult in the beginning, and because it's also difficult to plan. But when a few are created, they can be reused. A tip is to make the shopping list structured after the grocery store or purchase all the grocery online. If an activity has been performed during the day, one good advice is to have ready meals in the freezer. Schedule the administrative time into your calendar and break down activities in small steps, and then you can also set small achievable goals. Distributing energy means not only taking breaks during the performance of activities, but also it's very important, as I said before, to think about how to do an activity. Use good strategies, even on better days, always good strategies. And it's really important to be disciplined and consistent. It's very easy to say, I know, but I have to say it. Then the new habits can become routine. Slow down the pace in activity. Sit down in the shower, also if it's a good day. Sit and wash the hair. Always sit and brush your teeth. Give support under your arm so you can relax. Sit down or lay down when you talk. Walk as little as possible in the kitchen. It's walking distances you often do not think about. Do like chefs. Fetch the kitchen utensils. Pick up the ingredients and break. Think through what you will going to do. Or just do small limited parts of it. Many patients describe a huge sorrow and loss when it comes to the ability to participate in social events. Nevertheless, if they do participate, despite the limited energy to be with other people, they cross the border several times for what they really manage to do, and it will be a negative crash afterwards. A strategy is to set the time limits before. For example, a dinner with friends. You give clear information about the time for arrival and the time when you will leave. Make sure there is a place when you can be for a short while to rest from all the impressions. And a job to do in the family is a clear division of responsibilities, so the family member with ME can do things that are possible, and depending, of course, on the situation. And another very important strategy is accepting the need for help from others in everyday life. Again, to spare small drops of energy to use in a prioritized possible activity. Here are examples of possible changes in the environment that can be helpful in the struggle to spare force and energy. Organize items at home so that they are easy to reach. If possible, work from home. Support children, of course, to adapt the education with extended schooling, homeschooling, or use other digital techniques. Do not put valuable energy on the transportation distances. Try to use taxi, take help with the transport, or get a parking permit if you drive by your own. Aids and housing adaptation and other supportive possibilities to save energy. If a person is confined to bed many hours a day, it's obviously important to find a good resting position, and therefore I see an electric bed as a good activity aid. It's also easy to change body position without doing heavy work and moving pillows. To be seated while showering, a shower bath bench or a shower chair can be prescribed. And to facilitate getting up from the toilet, an elevated toilet seat can be used. Again, use a transportation wheelchair. I think it's important to get help with the transportation and not transport yourself with your arm. Another solution can be an electric wheelchair or scooter when the environment is suitable. A standing support chair to sit on gives a good physical relief when doing things in the kitchen. Simple housing adaptation can be a hand shower at the toilet to be able to care for intimate hygiene, and also well-adapted shower place with the shower near. To the bedbound patients, we try to do home visits. Usually we are two from the team, depending of course on the actual issues. Sometimes it's the physician and the nurse if they had to take some blood, or the physician and I. It depends, as I said, on the actual issues. When the level of activity are so low, it's important to assess if there is a tiny drop of energy to find and focus on something important, like talking to a friend for 1 minute. And for these patients, it can be helpful changing the environment at home, but also, of course, do it a little bit more easy for the patient and the persons helping the patients at home. Home visits, when I do that, and when I observation, it can be also the basis for an opinion on the need for home care. At our center, the psychologist and I run groups, small groups, and my group are focusing on activity management, of course. I participate also in family calls, often together with a physician or social worker for discuss how managing the activity in daily life. And sometimes I do assessment of activity performance as a basis for sick leave, but that is something I rather don't want to do. I want to end this talk by highlighting the importance to involve the family members, and above all, to base everything on the unique individual. I also want to emphasize that the hardest thing in the coping process is that you have to accept the actual situation and must handle something you haven't choose. And I think teamwork is very, very good to support these patients. And here are some references. And then I say, tack så mycket. Thank you.